Good evening and welcome to another episode of Inspire. I am your host, Shaw Hayes, and to the left of me or the right of me, whichever way you're looking, is our founder and producer of Inspire, is Kiana. Welcome, everyone.
Hello, everyone.
I am so excited. I was just looking through Octavio's Instagram. I always say that the stories of someone's life is some often told on the social footprints that we put out there. So I'm excited to talk to the man behind the photographs that we have joining us tonight. He is a photojournalist who captures images that want to communicate that of marginalized people. And we want to talk to him more about what he has going on with his career and his journey and how he got started in doing what he's doing. So without further ado, let's please welcome Octavio Jones.
Hi, good evening.
Hi, good evening. How are you?
I'm doing good.
Wonderful. So, I know earlier when we were doing our pre-interview, you said you were out of town and you were covering a trial, and I know part of what your journey in telling that story is to make sure you're there on the ground covering these stories. But before we get into where you are currently, I want to take a little step back about you deciding to become the person who wanted to pick up a camera and discover what that was like for you. Was it a hobby at first? How did you just decide that this is what the instrument you was going to use to tell stories?
I think it went back to sort of rediscovering what my passion, what my, one of my first loves was back in junior high school. Yeah, because I took like 2 years of photography in junior high school, and absolutely, I was sort of just enamored by the thing about able to go out and just take a picture with a film camera and using black and white film. And thanks to my teacher, I'll never forget his name. Never forget, who he is. His name is Mr. Freshwater, right? And he just took, a bunch of, eighth graders, from inner city DC, who, that attended Paul and said, "Hey, you guys need to come, take this photography class." So I did 2 years of that, and which was fun. But of course, as a 13 to 14 year old, you want to just kind of do everything that you can that you want to do. And also, I think one summer, I took a kind of shadow. Actually, it was like a summer job. We shadowed a portrait photographer for a summer in Washington D.C. And we sort of did the same thing by exploring, taking pictures all around D.C.
Mhm.
We would develop our film and process, then process the film and make prints of things that we have taken pictures of. But of course, the life goes on, right? So we, go to college and you major in business, and I was a business administration major in undergrad, and I really didn't know what exactly I wanted to major in. I just picked something, right? When they called our names out in orientation, so you kind of divided you up and what degree or what major you wanted to pursue. So I was like, I guess I just do business, right? And
Yeah.
not really knowing what exactly I wanted to do, but I end up graduated and working in HR as an HR benefits analyst or manager. And I did that for about 2 years, and all of a sudden I was sort of just like in my cubicle, uh, sort of not really being. Yeah, I guess I sort of was bored, right? But I was like, I just want to be creative again. I want to kind of figure things out, and I will often read news stories, right? I often read news stories. I'll read uh, the Washington Post, I read Wall Street Journal, New York Times, and I would come across like these amazing like photographs, right? Even with the News and Observer, because I was living in Raleigh, North Carolina at the time, and just seeing all these great work by these news photographers, I was like, man, this is something I really can probably do, or like at least try it out. I think I may have a passion for it because and I love the art of storytelling. It was like these visual photographers, or you call them photojournalists or documentary photographers. You see them
Mhm.
work. So I just not really. I would so day after day, I would spend hours on end between trying to process someone's benefits and enroll them in their benefits package. I would, kind of venture off and just daydream about, want to create these photographs. How do I get into this field, right? And
Mhm.
so I sort of had to discover that on my own. This is like well past, several years after, finishing undergrad. And
So
that,
let me
yeah.
ask you this question, not to interrupt your journey
Sure.
and where you are now.
Mhm.
When you had your teacher who gave you this introduction into photography, did you not in your own have an insight about it being a profession, or is it just that you didn't think about it as being a job?
Yeah, didn't think about it at the time. This is probably going back to when we shadowed this portrait photographer. I think probably should have known then, because this was his living. He had his own photo studio, right? And this is what he did. Um, Being a portrait photographer, not really taking it that serious. Like, maybe this is a career. I didn't know that, back then that you can be a news photographer, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let alone like, oh, can you really kind of do, have a career in that field, right? So, and a lot of I didn't know what news that probably then I didn't know what a news photography, existed, but sometimes I think I wish I could have started early, but things happen for a reason, right? So,
Absolutely.
but going back into the cubicle, like that's when it kind of like propelled me to say, hey, I need to discover like how do I do this. So I
Mm-hmm.
had to called up a couple weekly newspapers in the Raleigh area, right? And there's this two you actually get these papers there weekly at free. One was the Triangle Tribune, and one is the other Que Pasa, which is actually is a Latin American newspaper that was being published in the Raleigh,
Mm-hmm.
actually in North Carolina. And also the Triangle Tribune is a predominantly black newspaper. So I actually called them up saying, hey, I think I want to take I think I want to take pictures for your weekly paper, and I think I can try it out for free. I was actually working for free as a freelancer, right? If
Mm-hmm.
that makes any sense. So just to see if I really had the eye to work ethic to do this, and I did that for about a year, right? And I thought I was like, thought maybe being this self-taught news photographer, and I thought I was trying to emulate what I see from the other, like the big local papers, like the News and Observer, the Herald Sun, yes, I thought I was doing great at it, right? Until I made an appointment to meet with the director of photography at the News and Observer, right? His name was Robert Miller at the time, and he invited me into his office, and I thought I had this collection of photographs on my portfolio. It had these news clippings. They were all kind of like in a binder, and I showed my work. He said, "Hey, bring your portfolio, and I'll take a look at your work." Uh, and I'll never forget the day I walked in his office, and he was impressed with what I had. Right? Because he interviewed me. He was like, "Hey, what was my experience? What did I go to journalism school? Was self-taught?" And I just kind of telling you what I told him. It's like, "Hey, I just started about a year ago, and I'm ready to work at a daily newspaper." Right? so so he looked at my camera, and this is the time where that most newspapers and they're already crossing over into digital. Right here, I'm still
Mm-hmm.
shooting with a film camera, right? So he was like, "Oh,
Mm-hmm.
you make these pictures with a film camera." He was impressed by that, right? But he knew I needed
Experience.
more experience to get educated in this field of news photography. So he recommended me to go to a school called Randolph Community College in Asheville, North Carolina, which is about an hour and a half west of Raleigh. So, and he said, "Yeah, I think you should go to this program first to kind of immerse yourself and at least into this career of photojournalism, which is a great program at Randolph Community
Mm-hmm.
College.
Well,
Great
that's it.
film, yeah,
And I was going to bring to my next question is about the education because you
yeah,
can have an eye. I mean, some things are just innate. You
yeah,
just have the ability,
yeah.
but the skill that you had to learn in
Mhm.
terms of the education, go into what that was, especially for our youth who even think about getting into this field. What did it entail, and kind of what did it help you learn that you didn't already have?
Yeah, I think going back just because we were stepping off into the digital age of photography, that we had to go back and learn to the simple mechanics of operating a film camera, right? And actually
Mm-hmm.
still have these film cameras in my bag right now because they actually gave me touch of the essence there. My friend of mine, Cindy Burns, said that teaches the film photography is also the romance of photography, right? As per se, she
Mm-hmm.
said it, and I always wondered what she meant by that. because you still have to play with the aperture. You still have to able to adjust the shutter speed when you're on the manual mode, manual program of a camera. And just looking at film, because film sort of like slows you down, right? Because you don't have a digital camera and you can take 1,000 pictures, using
Yeah.
the memory card, right? So by doing that, it really kind of educated me that first year. And that second year in the program, that you start learning about the nuance about photojournalism, how to uh, interviewing, right? Or just knowing how to just asking someone's name, how to break the ice with the subject. If you want to do a story or someone, or learn how to respond to a spot news, or we call it emergency news situation, like hurricanes, or fires, or some accident that may happen during traffic. So or a political event. So it's like, we would learn about general news stories, sports, as
Hmm.
against the spot news. So this is something that you sort of have to get educated on how to how to respond, or how to work in that type of environment.
Well,
Um,
explain that, because I know that for those who may think in terms of the photojournalist, and especially as a photography, I mean, you're directing a person in the sense of if you're doing a photo shoot. And as far as
mm,
a photojournalist, or like for instance, like a videographer, you normally have a reporter there with
mm,
you that
yeah,
the person is capturing the story. As a
absolutely.
photojournalist, are you the solo person connecting to the story and the images that are getting captured?
Yeah. That's the thing, because you are connecting yourself to the story that you
Mhm.
wanted. Like a friend of mine told me, Jay Nolan had told me the other day. He was like, hey, he's seasoned. He's sort of retired photojournalist, even though he's freelances himself. But he said he's a veteran photojournalist, and he often said is like some things that he wish he could have done, during his early part of his career. He's always says that being in the moment of responding to a news assignment, or photographing a concert, or covering politics, or he was like, just kind of immerse yourself in the moment, just kind of slow down and put yourself there. And I kind of I try to do that now, right? Because I try to do that now. I try to emulate that. There's something that you can tell yourself to slow down, to put yourself in a moment, or especially it could be any news event that's happening, right? And you're trying to just slow yourself down and capturing the essence of what is happening in front of you, or what is happening around you. It always one thing about photojournalism, you always trying to look for moments, strong moments that people can relate to. Because I always try to say, if I'm going out covering an event, I want to put the readers or the viewers there with me, right? If it's a protest or a rally, or someone who's um, starting their first day on the job, um, either working at a fast food restaurant, because that person might be so proud and nervous, but they are proud to show up for work that first day, right? So it's like, I want to put the viewer there to take pictures of following John or Jane Doe around their job, on their first day at work, because we all remember our first day at work, how nervous we were. And so that, even if you start on a new job, right? So um, that's the one thing we look at ourselves as also being sort of documentarians, because we're documenting what's happening.
So,
Um,
so
yeah.
when you're looking into being, and I guess you're giving most of the assignments, like, do you go into thinking in terms of how you want to position yourself? Is it about where you're standing? And I know there's oftentimes a swarm of other outlets and media outlets that are out there.
Mhm.
Is it about positioning? Do you think about that, or you're just thinking about how you're going to pitch yourself in position, like you said, so that you're taking the reader where you are?
Yeah, it's all about, definitely composition. If it's if I carry two cameras with me. Depends on what's the heavy load of the time. But if I know it's going to be a lot of press there, um, yeah, if some dignitary, someone who's going to be speaking, or touring a facility, or doing some XYZ with a mayor or a senator, we look for, I make sure that I have at least two bodies with me. So I use a wide angle lens, or I'm carrying a telephoto lens, or a longer lens. So I can just also capture tight moments of someone's face. If Especially if it's hot outside, if a CEO of a company is looking at some new breaking ground of a site. If it's going to be hot, if the CEO is going to be wiping his forehead, you know, just to see hot, I would make sure that I'm capturing that moment. The CEO wipes their forehead of sweat, right? Especially down here in Florida, it's hot all the time. So it's like, especially during the summer. So, but yeah, weather, you know, plays a part in that too. so, but yeah, that's one of the things I always try to make sure that I capture these moments that, wow, you know, like what is actually happening there? Oh, is it really 95 degrees and it feels like 120? Um, yeah, if it's cold or it's like, you know, it's weather patterns or, you know, it depends on how when someone's feeling that day. Yeah, it's a range of emotions that I'm looking for. Um,
And that's so amazing to think about, though, that you're thinking about that element down to the weather, so that the person is being drawn in just based on the climate around them. So they can
yeah.
feel, even if they're in a warmer climate or colder
Hmm.
climate, they can feel the temperature off of that person's
Yeah.
expressions or what they're doing.
Hmm.
That's such an amazing composition to think about when you're
Hmm.
going into that. So I was going to ask a question about shots. You know, as a journalist, you're often given list of questions to ask. So those are the things that you go into saying, these are the kind of things I want to get coming out of this set of, or being in that moment.
Yeah, yeah, because it depends on who's going to be there, and it's also you have to be also it takes a lot doing your homework too, right? If I want to expect, um, let's say if I want to expect, if trying to think of an assignment, if I want to expect going back to the mayor, right, and the mayor's cabinet or someone from city council is going to be at the groundbreaking event, right? Say it's going to be a groundbreaking of a new hotels coming downtown Tampa, right, and I want to know. I'm going to assume that all the city council is going to be there supporting the mayor, right? So, and I think it's important for me to know if I'm going to have city council John or city council Jane or Jerry or Kevin or Mary or whoever. I want to make sure that I capture all of them that's going to be there because I'm going to think that maybe the reporter who's going to be doing the story on the groundbreaking of this hotel is going to write about, oh yeah, by the way, City Council XYZ, they were there too, right?
Mm.
So, but make sure we're going to capture those photos because we want to document who was there that day, right? And why they were there or who didn't show up. Right? So, um, but yeah, and I think it's important for us to make sure that as photographers or photojournalists, that we do capture those moments of people who were there because it's when I think of news photography, everything is it's just for the record, right? We're actually there recording, not just by
Mhm.
audio recording, right, but actually recording through still images or moving images through video
Yeah.
too, right? So and I think it's important. I think it's one of the things that we really have to hold dear to be objective in our reporting when we're capturing these moments um, to make sure we are photographing. Like I said, we're not talking about putting the viewer there, right? I want to actually put them there because I want to set the scene for the viewer if they're going to be reading the story too, right? So I think the sense of place is always important to have that in your collection of photos, right? Because if the scene is going back to downtown to the hotel,
Mhm.
if I'm in Tampa, Florida, I want to make sure that, oh yeah, by the way, that this photograph is telling me that, yeah,
Who
this
you
is
are.
somewhere where I am, right? It's important.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
The who, what, when, why, where.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So when you're in these moments of shooting, I mean, most I would probably say not all the time, but you could be in dangerous situations. I know there are times where you're coming into things in the aftermath of some things happening. How do
Mhm.
you prepare yourself to think about the fact that you could be walking into dangerous terrain?
It's just trying to get a feel of like where I'm going or like what to look for or just sort of just more like checking the environment because things can you can always expect the unexpected which could be anywhere but I know I've been to some spot news or like if there has been some terrible incident or terrible accident and I go there I just have to be aware of my surroundings or what how far can I kind of what the limits I can go, what are my limitations, sometimes you will have emergency personnel on the scene that kind of they'll let you know what your limitations are as a journalist because if you see tape go up somewhere don't cross this line, that you don't cross this line, right? So it's pretty much will let you know like it's dangerous, kind of, to go beyond that point, and you have to respect that, right? So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think it's something that just depends on where you are, and just knowing the element. I guess knowing the not six the element, knowing where you are. Then I guess it depends on what's happening, because like you said, I respond to some situations where things are happening anywhere in the city, anywhere in the state. So, especially well, even going back to weather, hurricanes, right?
Yes.
For example, in Florida. I have to be careful of knowing what elements that are going to be around. What's dangerous when hurricanes are coming. I have to look for down power lines, right? I have to look for possibly if I'm going through water and if my wearing waders could there be reptiles in the water,
Mm.
such as snakes and alligators, right? Those are things I have to be careful of. Just flash flooding. These are just examples of what things that are just Mother Nature can tell you. This is
Yes.
where it can be very dangerous too. So yeah.
You want to get the shot, but you want to also be
Yeah,
there to
it's not, this,
to enjoy
every
it.
photo is not going to be your award-winning photo. Just so you're there to doc. Oh yeah, if it's a hurricane,
Yeah.
if it's flooding, just you're going to capture that, right? So going in above and beyond during the hurricane it could be dangerous too. Yeah.
So when you're, I guess even after having all this knowledge, now that you've gone to community college and you're gotten this, I guess this arsenal of information from this school, how do you take that back into now translating that to somebody saying, all right, we want to hire you?
Oh, it goes back to doing internships, and it goes back to your portfolio, doing your internships, able trying to land that first job. Also, like if you're constantly meeting with editors, if you that's the thing now these days. You kind of want to put your work in front of an editor, right? And they're looking at work, and you want to get feedback on where to go, where else they need to do. Just kind of if your portfolio is not as strong, they kind of give you like the blueprint to tell you what you need to work on. But as I always tell, like when we had interns that come through the paper, I always tell them that, hey, look, I'm here as a staffer. That's great. You're coming here for an internship. Also, like, what is your plan after
Mhm.
your internship, right? If there's no opportunity, I always try to be sort of like that mentor, because hey, I would kind of look for like see what places that may have an opening, what would be a great place for you to land your first job. I've been pretty successful in doing that with staffers that have come through the paper. These try to help them get them a job somewhere, right? Or kind of lead them in the right direction. Or
Do
try
you
to
remember?
go
Do you
ahead.
remember your first job that you had?
Yeah, yeah,
As
absolutely.
far as like taking photos, documenting.
First job was at the Fayetteville Observer in Fayetteville, North Carolina. It was again, it was probably it's great. Got a chance to work with some great photo editors and great staff photographers, who were there at the time. One actually still there, and yeah, it's just able to kind of immerse yourself, there at the paper, and also within the city of Fayetteville, right, and surrounding counties, which is a unique place. You also had like rural, also you had a little bit of city. You also had, of course, Fort Bragg and Pope Air Force Base. So it was never a dull day to go to work. It was also it didn't feel like work because you enjoyed what you were doing, right? So,
Mm.
um, but yeah, it was great just being there on the first job. And I learned so much in the time I was there. I was almost there like 2 years. Then I went off to grad school after that, but it
Mm.
was just amazing. Yeah.
Is there a waiting period before you actually get sent out to do a job, or do they send you right out as soon as you come on, even as
I
an?
think that yeah, it's a good question, because the expectations of like if you had like an internship or two, normally the Federal Reserve usually require you to just have one internship. But I think because I worked at the weeklies, it actually helped me because it actually a great deal, because knowing how to go into assignment, but now you have all this training and internships, right? You sort of like, oh, you can actually take 10 steps forward instead of five, right? Because you're able to kind of double down on the assignment. So after maybe like after like the third or fourth day, after you do all the orientation and the paperwork, it's like, oh, by the way, here's your first assignment. You're out the door, right? So yeah, it didn't take long at all. Yeah,
Oh wow.
yeah,
Awesome.
yeah. So, but yeah,
Sure.
go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, no, no. And recently you were in Haiti. So
Yeah.
you not only do work here in the US, but you also travel abroad.
Yeah, that was Haiti was definitely an eye opener for me. Just kind of working abroad up in a in a natural disaster zone within the country kind of opened my eyes to actually being there in Haiti. I've always wanted to go to Haiti to work and actually just to visit in general. It was such a it was such a it was such a that was it was a great experience for me as a visual journalist and just being there on the island itself, on that part of the island, which actually it sort of felt like it sort of felt like in a way of like when I was there, people welcomed you with open arms. I never seen a more welcoming people, right?
Mm,
In the middle of a natural disaster where I was, and people was very nice and just very wanted to know, just as curious, wanted to know who I am. Just I want to know who they are at the same time. And but yeah, it was such a beautiful place. I know Haiti is going through a lot right now, but it doesn't overshadow of the people of Haiti of who they are, right? And I was able to kind of immerse myself quickly, I
mm,
think, and just trying to figure out and document what's going on there during the earthquake. Um,
right.
but yeah, but it is a I think Haiti is a magical place for some reason. There is a and I wish the best. I wish all the hope for Haiti that it will one day will have its rise again as a country. But yeah,
Yeah.
Well,
Thanks.
part of your mission is you speak of being able to capture photos that tell the stories of marginalized communities. What does that mean to you, and how has your storytelling through photos been impacted by that?
I think it's gonna be personal too. I think when you look at marginalized communities of like knowing how um knowing how to like if you kind of if things are not so well, things are going in your family. If being kind of growing up with a single mom raising four boys and kind of experience of like growing up in the city and kind of yeah being on welfare and just watch our mom had to kind of rise above that and try to like and try in her own right to become successful and get a job and make sure that we all finished went through school and go to college and so on. But and this is one of the things I took it personal every time I would go to a marginalized community because if I a document of a single mother who has a child or two or three kids, right, or who may be disenfranchised because of her circumstances, I can also it sort of becomes personal in a way because in my part of storytelling because I actually can relate of what he or she is going through, right? And what the kids are going through. So it's like, so there's a delicacy there that I have to take a very sensitive approach to the story instead
Mhm.
of just jumping in the situation as I'm just here to take a picture and I'm only going to be here for 20 minutes. That's it. No, I can't do that, right? So, but yeah, I think this is some of the things that we all take personal in a way. I guess is my um, I guess with through my own experience, right? So of
Yeah.
knowing how to take care. You have to take great care when it comes to your storytelling as a photojournalist. Yeah. So
And I'm assuming that I guess the goal and mission, if you are working for a paper or a media outlet, is become a staff. But can you be a staff photojournalist and freelance, or is there a conflict?
no, it's a conflict. It can be tough, and I think unless your prospective employee will let you do that, depends on it has to. Normally, that they can't conflict with each other. But
Mhm.
like normally, people I know who are staff, they're just strictly staff and don't do any freelance unless they do weddings, right? If
Yeah.
they have time to do to do weddings. So usually weddings don't conflict with any big news like
Right.
news.
Nothing political behind that,
No,
right?
no, no, not at all. So some may do that, but yeah, if you're freelance, I just know those who are freelance, they're just strictly doing that. Yeah. Mhm.
And I mean, I guess because I guess that's a great thought in terms of if you want to get into that realm of like becoming someone who's employed by someone
Hmm.
as opposed to someone who's freelances, because then at that point you can determine what you want to put out there. If you wanted
Hmm.
to create your own images, because that's the other part about it being a staff, you don't own your images, the person you work for does,
Yeah.
versus with freelancers, or is it the
Hmm.
other way around?
Yeah, it depends on the agreement. I think normally if you're working for an agency or a news agency or commercial agency, they typically maybe own your images. It depends on the agreement. It depends on the term usage. I think after a while, it all depends on the agency or the news agency itself, the news
Mm-hmm.
organization. Opposed to freelance, sometimes you may own your images. It depends on who you're working for. It depends on what the contract is.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there's usually some leeway when it comes to as a freelancer about owning your images though. Yeah. The most of the time you do have rights of your images, yeah. After a
So
certain number of days. It could be 30 days for usage or 45 days or what have you. So
So if you wanted to create like a photo book of your own that you would then put into print for reproduction and sale, is that something you would be allowed to do as a staff writer or staff journalist?
yeah, it depends on the agreement you have with your employer as a staff photojournalist. Um, it all comes down to licensing. That's the big thing in photography. I'm still starting to learn too. What is the licensing aspects about photographs? It comes down
Yeah.
to copywriting. Yeah, what it's a lot of legal jargon when it comes to what happens to this photograph, right? Especially if it's owned by XYZ newspaper or
Hmm.
XYZ news organization. So yeah, so yeah.
You get the credit. That's the main thing, right? That's the
Yeah, you
important
know,
part.
no, you get the credit, but if you're a freelancer, you want to get paid. Nobody really cares about credit, right? So yeah, so that's the thing because if you're a freelancer, this is your living, right? And
Yeah.
you want to you in this industry as a freelancer, you want to get paid what you're worth. Nobody wants to work for free. Nobody wants to work for pennies as a freelance photographer because this is your career and you take great pride in that. And that's what I tell, and I share that with other emerging photographers who are wanting to get paid for their photography, right? Because you have to. This is just it's like is just as important as any other career. People who are self-employed, right? So
Hmm.
you get this is a service that you provide for someone or for a client, or for clients or for organization. So yeah, yeah. So.
You talked about your importance of mentoring to young people as they're coming up. Who gave you that mentorship as you were going through it? Was anybody inspired you?
Yeah, I also think people and it goes back to when I was in junior high school, also in the church. A good friend of mine, actually, I talked to him yesterday, Reginald Danny. He was definitely one of my early on first mentors. He took me under his wing. He just finished the Navy. He's just finished, he's got his MBA from the University of Maryland, and he owned his own software engineering company. So they kind of pair like us with mentors and I guess our youth church group in DC
Mm.
during that time, and we just stayed in touch. We'd go to NBA games. He would give me a tour of his company, and I would see all his employees that would work with him. They were all like these young engineers, fresh out of college, and I remember when he started his company, he was like, yeah, he took a big risk, and he said, hey, this is the point of investment and working hard, just doing things the right way, and just also caring about his own staff, right, and having his own family. And I think that was sort of inspiring for me to see that, being a 13, 12, or 13-year-old at the time, growing up in DC, it was really like, yeah, you can really do something really cool. So I didn't, and of course, I didn't become an engineer, what have you, but I saw what it's like to kind of
Yeah.
be out there and then you kind of own your own business, right, and run your own company.
Well, I mean, it kind of alludes to the next question I asked you in terms of growing up in DC, as I was saying earlier, that I'm from the Washington area, and knowing how during that certain time of an era, it was either one way or the other. You could have gone.
Mhm.
What do you attribute that you being able to make those decisions for yourself that led you to be able to go to high school, graduate, and on to college and having a career?
I think it definitely comes down to my mom, of course. She worked for DC Fire Department. As a paramedic, and it was kind of watch her work hard and pay bills and put food on the table. It was like, she always kept us in line, right? And we saw what was happening around us. We saw what these growing up in DC during that time was a love hate relationship. It was like you hate that,
Mhm.
crime was high during that time, but also I also loved the city. DC during that time was still it was it's a beautiful
Yeah.
city.
Chocolate
I mean,
City.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And I was that thing. My aunt used to take us to Georgetown. We used to go down, on U Street. Go to Howard all the time. We would go to Rocky Park, and you saw the beauty of
Yes.
DC, right?
See all of
And
it around you.
yeah, Silver Spring, go to City Place Mall. We used to like kind of go there after school. When City Place was first built, it's a beautiful place, and I think you were sort of inspired by what was happening there. Like we would go to Howard's homecoming. We would kind of ride our bikes down there during the week, during the weekend that was happening while we were in high school, and see like, who was all these folks coming? It's kind of coming to Howard on the one weekend, and it was a draw, right? And but yeah, that's one thing that I think that sort of inspired me to kind of, hey, you can do great, outside of post high school, go to college, or go to the military, or do something with your life, So yeah.
I can imagine that your mother probably gave you some wise advice. Is there something that she poured in you or told you that stuck with you through all these years?
Oh, uh, yeah. Make sure just don't procrastinate. Always try to
Mm.
follow through. That's the big thing. Is like just trying to follow through. Finish what you start. Is that's the thing. We always try. I remind myself not to put something off for tomorrow or next week. Because all everything else starts to pile up. That you
Mm.
keep put things off, and it's like, oh, I
Yeah,
should have done that. Like I said, I was going to do it. So she's always just said, don't procrastinate. Just follow through and kind of because it makes it easier when you get things done right away, right? Yeah, she's always about that too. Yeah,
that's amazing.
yeah.
So, going in back into your journey in terms of being a photojournalist, and you have set yourself to the point where you have created images that are everlasting. When I was looking through the stuff that you've done, in stuff you've created. It's just amazing to think about a skill set that I don't think I have. When you think about the people who you're around, the young people that come around you, is it something that you can see in someone early on that you can see that they have it? I'm assuming there's something that's innately in you that you have to have. It's not just about picking up a camera. Something has to be inside
I,
of you.
I,
Can you something?
yeah, dude. This is true story. We were all at this. I was at a conference because I'm a member of National Association of Black Journalists, and I was at a conference one year, and I think it was in I think we were in Philadelphia or in Boston. I think we were in Boston, right? So, and we already had this one intern. Her name was Monica. She was already coming to our paper, and I looked at the portfolio. I was like, oh my god, I knew she was there because her internship, her portfolio looked great, and she's a great photojournalist now. And but there was also because it was part of this. They were part of the student internship program during the conference, and there was another lady there named her name was Sophia Allison, and she really didn't have any. I looked at her portfolio, and she didn't really have any newspaper background. She didn't have an internship, but she did like this documentary work, and she had this documentary work from the Cook County jail in Chicago. And I saw her work, and I talked to her, and I said, "Hey, this is you have a great start here." And I saw her images; they were pretty powerful, right? For someone who didn't have any training, right, or someone who didn't have a background in news or documenting photography, but she did this while she was in school in Chicago.
Hmm.
And I got on the phone with my director of photography. Said, "Hey, man, I think I see something in this lady named Sophia, who I just met at the conference." And I was like, "Hey," and I was like, and I kept begging her. I was like, "Hey, you gotta get her in an internship because I think she's in a she had like me. She was going in a direction like she know what she wanted to do. She know what she wanted to be, and we end up getting her here at the Tampa Bay Times in St. Petersburg, and she was there for a summer internship, right? But we started to see her trajectory just like take off. I mean, she just hit the ground running when she came because she was so hungry. She was just eager to learn. She was wow. Sophia was like, we knew that something. We knew that we had something special on our hands. Right there with Monica. So fast forward when Monica, I mean, when Sophia's internship was up, but Monica got hired, which is great, right? Because Monica was both of them was like they were knocking down the doors, right? They were hitting the ground running. So too bad we couldn't hire, we couldn't hire both of them at the same time. But Sophia was like one of what she should do, what she again. I was sort of like questioning what she wanted to do. So I recommended her go to grad school at UNC Chapel Hill in that visual communications program because that was an area where she wanted to do more video, right? She wanted to immerse herself in video,
Mhm.
multimedia, and make short documentary projects. And I knew that's probably the place where she would best fit because knowing what their history, I had a friend of mine that's already we had finished school there, and she ends up going there, and I just saw her work just take off again. It was just like she's making these incredible short documentaries, like these films.
Wow.
Now she's like doing that. She gets a job with a subsidiary of Univision. She did that for like 6 months to a year, then comes back to UNC to finish a grad degree, and she made this short documentary film as I guess is her final project, uh,
Mhm.
uh, a love song for Latasha, and
Oh, okay.
yeah, so that ends up becoming a Netflix film.
I was
And
I feel like I feel so weird. I was like, I feel like I've seen this title for
yeah,
somewhere. Okay.
yeah, it's that's Sophia. It's like, and she ends up uh, doing this other feature film through Netflix, and now she's like this documentary filmmaker now. And this is someone
That's
who
amazing.
started as a intern who we had to call the editor and say, "Hey, this is someone who was just doing a documentary project on Cook County Jail in Chicago almost 10 years ago now, right?"
Wow.
So I think that was I'm really happy that we got her at the Times because no talent. She may have found a way of doing that anyway, but I think that when you notice someone who has talent or someone who just has an eye like that,
Yeah.
you just have to like go to bat for them, yo. It's like, hey,
Yeah.
you do what you can, because I know like you see someone who was like, and I saw her work. I was like, Boyzelle, we gotta, yo,
Well, that's good because
yeah,
oftentimes people think there's competition amongst this, like getting the first
yeah,
shot and being the first person to, like breaking a story. You get the shot out there first, then
yeah,
people will know your name. But it's also good to know that people can also champion for you as well.
yeah. That's one thing you gotta when somebody if you can kind of mold that talent there, like
Mhm.
it's not about like who's the first one out of the blocks, right? And it's in the 100-meter dash, but it's like, oh, if somebody's coming in second or third, they coming in second or third for a reason, right?
Yeah.
They're there, but not quite. So you want to, do training and more of that to kind of for them to get first place every time. And that's what we saw. That's what I kind of believe when we bring interns in because I try to like, trying to help them or try to guide them or any other emerging photographer that's like, hey, what can I do to get to the next level, right? I'm never a dream killer, right? People talk about dream killers.
Yeah.
Somebody are trying to say, hey, you shouldn't do this. This industry is not the best for you. No, because I want people to kind of experience that for themselves because you never know
Mhm.
what direction, hey, you never know. Industry may need them.
Yeah.
you
Well,
know?
and I was going to ask about the transition between if or the skill set to be transferable between being a photographer or videographer. If someone did one or the other, is it easily to transfer those skill sets from one to the other if they decide to do the other side versus the other?
No, you could do both, right?
Mm.
Because it's like it's one of those things that it's another skill set that'll benefit you in
Mhm.
the long run. Yeah, it's had a professor to tell me in community college. He's like, hey, and I should have listened to him because he said he looked at the class and said, all of you guys gonna be freelancers anyway one day. You're gonna do maybe 5 or 10 years at your newspaper, and you're gonna end up becoming freelancers, right? And Bill never lied because here I am doing freelancing. He said, yeah, by the way, you better learn how to design websites. You better learn how to do yada yada yada. He was he actually laid it out step by step over 10 years ago. He was like, hey, learn how to build websites, learn a lot of video, and just be prepared to do all this stuff, right? So, and I often get questions like, if I'm a freelance, can you do X, Y, Z? Like, nah, I can't do that, but I think I need to. learn it, right? So yeah, but I think when someone's giving you something like to wise advice like that, you have to consider it because you just never know when you're going to need that skill set to transition
Yeah,
into
I think
another.
when I first started doing stuff in TV and film, they were saying how they created these new terms like predator and
Hmm.
like shoot, like all these versions, this hybrid version of some other thing that
Hmm.
you had to be able to do because you had to be able to do everything. Now you had to be able to shoot and edit and produce and this.
Exactly.
So
Hmm. Yeah, it's
there's
doing
so much of
video,
that.
edit video, yeah, all that is like, yeah. I mean, know how to do it now, just the basics of it. But if at least you know how to maybe to make a simple, like not simple, make a video package that at least you can put something together
Yeah.
if someone needs it, right? So yeah,
To just, know how to edit, if nothing else, to be able to
yes,
pull it together.
exactly.
Yeah.
That's
So
right.
I saw that on your website you have a project that's specifically dedicated to go-go. Now,
Yeah, yeah.
now, how much of that music? I mean, you're down south now. I know I was so funny. I was riding in the car, like I said, I'm in New Jersey, and EU came on. Of course, the time is the butt, and it's so funny how I just see the images and how it takes me back to the old school days of being in
Hmm.
DC.
Hmm.
Like how much of that kind of music and just music in general, being able to play the images through the sound, having the images play through sound in that sense.
Just for what when I yeah working on that project,
Yeah,
I think working on that project is yeah, that was something I wanted to do because thanks to my brother, he was DJing for a lot of the go-go bands, and I called him up. That was when I was in grad school, and I was like, hey, I want to do my magazine project on the state of go-go in DC during that time. And it was such a because he actually had the keys and kind of like, hey, I'm gonna get you in contact with XYZ from XYZ band. And so he was like my source. He was like, hey, call such and such, maybe they make room for, I don't know. He didn't make any promises, but so I had to kind of navigate that world of like, kind of going behind the scenes of like exploring what these, go-go bands are the city in now, or like, because the city was still starting to gentrify a lot, and there was so go-go bands are being pushed out into Maryland, not
yeah,
having venues in DC anymore.
no, it's true.
And that I actually don't have any. I don't think they even play in DC anymore, right? So, but yeah, just go behind the scenes and just kind of explore that world of go-go music, and and just like the bands like Red Essence and Backyard and Junkyard and the bounce beat bands. Now it just seeing, I never heard of bounce beat, right? I was like, what is bounce beat? But you heard it, you heard,
It's new
yeah,
stuff. Yeah,
yeah. It's part. It's like how go-go has evolved to another level, right? During that time,
yeah,
but it's just like I was just amazed by the sound of it, and I was like, wow, I was so enamored. I was like, wow, this is great, and I was like, just telling this, able to tell their story, right? And just like, and see these moments where, how Backyard has been around during that time for almost, yeah, 20 years, right? But still had that same sound as if I was still in high school. And
yeah,
I think I was like, wow, this is like incredible, just to capture that moment and just trying to be in that moment in the club and like just documenting that, right? And I think that night of documenting Backyard in the club, it was something that was like that energy there was is like it was just
yeah,
incredible just to document that
yeah.
these band members are making music, but also their fans were still coming out.
Yeah,
It was,
they're
it
still
was
there. They're still there.
they're still there. I'm a fan. It was like, yeah, actually, there was a mother and a daughter that were there at the club that night,
Partying
partying
together with the
together and just
kids.
having a great time, right? It was like, and I'm talking to people, and it's like, yeah, we will always love this band, and
Yeah.
that was like, yeah, it was just, so it would document it, like go and kind of tell that story from newer bands that were trying to come up in DC during that time was, yeah, it was great. I'm so happy I got a chance to work on that. Yeah.
So now from music to sports. Now when I see images of sports and I always see these photographers who are on the sidelines of basketball games or even at football games, and I see how they're getting pounced upon trying to get these shots and to think that there's gonna be a stretcher coming out to come get them at some point, but they just right back up getting these shots.
Mhm.
Talk about the intensity because I know there has to be a lot more intensity going into getting those shots, and how do you stay calm knowing at any point in time you could be pummeled on at any given
Oh
moment.
yeah. I always call myself. I'm not a really a good sports photographer, but I love to photograph sports. but he would do it. I think I had my thing at the time of the paper when I worked and I covered football or basketball was always two of my favorite sports to cover. I mean, baseball too. But it didn't matter what sport it was. But I think basketball was always electric for me because it's fast paced. They were scoring all the time. Football, sometimes I would love covering football. But sometimes I would get frustrated because there'd be so many people on the sidelines. I was like, man, I got to just stay in one spot. But it's an art. I think sports photography, sports photojournalism, it is another level of like
Mm,
art. Because you have to be on point most of the time. You can't try to miss anything. You're
yeah.
looking for like peak moments. I think with sports photography, it's like one thing that you look for moments all the time, right? There's action, right? There's action and there's tackling, there's hits, there's throwing and catching and passing, what have you. But you just look for moments, and I think that what sets like great sports photojournalists, just your average sports photographers, because there's several who I admire, but they're just such amazing photographers. I think with sports, I think now in sports photography it's really have gone to another level, I believe, because I'm just such in awe of what sports photographers can really do.
And
Yeah.
I can imagine they say the same thing about you. So
Oh yeah, I hope so. Yeah.
like I said, when you watch him, you can see an image that can make you cry. I've never seen a sports image to make me actually feel emotional, unless it's my,
Mm.
Washington team losing again.
No,
But
yeah.
other than that,
Mhm.
I definitely can see that your images have been impactful and how it has, really it changed how people, receive their news because of, especially now that we see images on Instagram that can draw you in. And being a photojournalist and being a photographer that can do that, when you just scroll to your page, you stop and you're like, well, what happened there? And now I want to read the story behind it. You're the
Mhm.
person who leads the story,
Mhm.
because without the images, we wouldn't probably be drawn in, especially
Mhm.
now that everything's going on a digital platform.
Mhm.
Of the time I see the image before I even know what the story is about.
Mhm.
So I think that's the amazing thing that you have done in your career. And for all that you have done and what you have done over your career, what is the most proudest moment you've had?
I think the proudest moment I think right now is like, able to kind of meet people along the way, throughout my journey. I think able to kind of share those moments. Actually, I will never forget the moment of like I remember like when you continue to chase what you love. I remember when we had layoffs, for my job, right? And and I'm talking to people. It's like, man, what I do now? What I do now? So my buddy JR was like, man, he was like, Octavio, man, what are you wearing for, right? Man, he said, man, you're gonna be fine. I was like, JR, what are you talking about, man? Just got laid off. He said, dude, he's like, look, he said, man, he had to remind me of like what I've done for like for the community where I live, documenting the community, documenting Tampa, St. Pete, and Pasco and Hernando counties. He had to remind me, he was like, dude, you really done a lot. I
Yeah,
think you're gonna be fine, man. And he was right. He was talking about somebody who was inspired. That was a moment I'll never forget. I was sitting on my chair, in the front porch in the middle of the day. It was a Friday, and like, man, that was a proud moment. I think we were. And he would say, "Hey, dude, just kind of just get up off your butt and just get on your horse and just start, riding because he knew like the grind. He knew I had the grind, knew I had the hustle and the drive to do good work. And I think it was all about the work, right? It's all about it's about you want to get paid, but it's all about doing the work in this
yeah,
industry. Yeah,
yeah, no,
yeah.
it does
So
come. That's for
yeah,
sure.
yeah. So
So I
yeah.
mean, it would. So in terms of being the progress, I know being a freelancer, it is one of those things like you say, you want to get paid for your work.
Mhm.
What would be, I guess, the most challenging aspect of it, and what is the best part of it, as far as doing the freelancer side of it?
I think because you get hired to do a lot of assignments. Also, you try to pitch work too. I think that's another like direction I'm trying to. I've always pitch work because it's always, especially what was going on or what's happening in this area. Sometimes and people may say, "Oh, yeah, we like that idea. Let's go for it." And sometimes they don't. So it
Mhm.
makes you go back to the drawing board. It's like, hey, you put your news hat on, right, to see what's important, what's relatable right now, what's going on around the country or globally that's affecting folks in a good way or a not so good way. And yeah, so that's some of the things I kind of think about to like, just kind of pitch and kind of continue to work on stories to find out what
Mhm.
stories are very like they have the, I guess, people in this industry. So what's the news peg, right? So, well, sometimes it doesn't have to have a news peg. So it just depends on um, what you like covering. So you have to
Mhm.
find that, that agency or that magazine or that newspaper or who would cater to a story that you have
Mhm.
a passion and to want to tell that story. Who can, who may want to carry a nice a documentary piece on XYZ, who may take it, right? So you constantly pitching to editors. So
And having that, being the person who I guess is a freelancer, can you also have an agent? Doesn't Would you have someone who represents you to pitch you as well to other people?
I think yeah, that definitely if you're working for a lot of the high end, like I'll call high end news agencies, what have you, they do have like those agents that would kind of pitch those stories for you, or they
Mm.
someone who may represent you, or a collective who may represent you. So they may have a story. So they do have that. That does exist.
Okay.
For sure. Yeah.
And so if you had someone who's starting out, who's thinking about, because I know with you started out with one career and then the calling came for you.
Mhm.
But if you had someone who's thinking about diving into this field, what advice would you give them?
Oh, just well, there's so much advice I can give them. If they want to go to school to learn this, or they want to kind of do it on their own, because you can actually do that too, right? You
Hmm.
can do that too, watching online or studying, or just kind of grabbing your own textbooks and your own camera and it's sort of like go out there and just learn. And there's photojournalism books, textbooks out there. You can go to find out what some of the best schools in the country that are offering photojournalism programs. I also advise them to, it depends on where they live, maybe contact a local photojournalist and find them, either through a newspaper or someone who's probably freelancing, you can go through, there's other sort of resources like the National Press Photographers Association. You can go to them and you can join them. I would advise anyone who has an interest in photojournalism. That's a great association to join and to find out if you really want to be involved in being in this industry.
National
Um,
Press Photography. Okay.
yeah, mppa.org. Yep. Which I'm a proud member of, right? Been a member of it actually since I was in college too. So, um, but yeah, there's so much, looking for internships. What do they have a drive for? Do they want to be in, do they want to work type of photography or what field they want to go into? Is it politics? Is it sports? Do you want to be a sports photographer or, you want nature photographer? Depends on what they want to do. There's something out there for everyone.
So,
Yeah.
although you say you can be self-taught, does
Mhm.
having that paper and degree or something that says you have been trained help, as opposed to those who said they have just done it themselves?
Yeah, that helps. That helps because they're some of the greatest photographers we had of our time have never stepped foot in a photography school, right? So
Mhm.
it just depends on that. Was it? It depends on the person, right? It depends on the hunger, what they're doing, and what they're striving to be, or you can attend workshops, right? I have a friend of mine, Mike, who's never went to photography school. But he's a veteran now. He's a freelance photographer in the DC area, right? He's got
Who
he's
we've
a
had on our show.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, someone who has a totally different story than me, right?
Yeah.
He's a great photographer, photojournalist. His documentary work is incredible, and I was like, I'll often call him up and say, "Hey, man, I just saw your work today in the New York Times, or the Washington Post, whoever." Yeah, he's good. Yeah, so
And I salute all of you because I feel like it's one of the the unsung people who don't get as much accolades it should be. I know within your community, within your field, people celebrate you all, but you're not on the forefront on the, the interviews that people talk about, but you all are the ones again who tell the story that we often don't see, get the names and the credit for that, because we see it, and those who care about it will look and see who the photo credit is, but others just see the image and don't realize there is a person who captured that image. And so I salute you and others like yourself who are out here capturing these images, especially like yourself, who's trying to do so that helps speak, give voices to the marginalized community. So we thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we try to, like, I know you were saying in terms of giving advice to children and or anyone looking to get into this field. But I also like to turn this onto yourself. If you had to tell yourself when you were sitting in that cubicle and you could talk to yourself now, what would you tell yourself?
Oh man, just are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. Yeah, we just do a solo
Oh,
screen. Go ahead. Go ahead.
oh, okay, okay. Yeah, I think I'll just tell myself to just just that's kind of hard. Just keep follow your passion and follow your drive, and just and keep looking at those newspapers and those those other independent photography magazines that are online. Keep looking at the other. Keep looking at Magna Photo Agency. Keep looking at Seven Photo Agency. I would, just keep looking at other photographers' work. Yeah, because I was definitely doing that while I was there in the cubicle for sure. And just follow your passion. Yeah, just keep, just stick with that drive for sure. Yeah.
That cubicle life, I'll tell you, it's either it probably has been the birth of so many people leaving and following
Yeah.
their dreams.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, it's good to sit in the cubicle, yeah, because it would definitely have you thinking of like, you know, what do I have a passion for, and what do I want to do, right? And this is probably why you don't see cubicles like they have evolved now.
Yeah.
I think you don't see them anymore. They become
No.
like workspaces, right? So
Yeah,
yeah,
they do. Open spaces now.
open spaces, yeah. So I'm
You
sitting
can't you
here.
can't plot your dream in an open space, but
No, you can't, not at all. Everybody's looking at know what you're doing. So,
although
yeah.
in my cubicle when I was in that 9 to 5 sector, my whole cubicle was draped with things. They should have known I was trying to get out of it, because I was like, I
Yeah,
had a sign up behind me that said, your current destination is not your final your current
yeah,
occupation is not your final destination.
that's right.
My boss should have been like, what are you trying to tell us? But
I
yes.
know. Yeah, yeah,
Well, we thank you so much for joining us and sharing your journey with us. And I know it's probably so many other questions, but for those who need to get more information, I don't know if you take on just people who want to be mentored by you, but if you want to find out more about Octavio, please go to his website at www.octaviojones.com. He's also on Instagram too as well, and make sure your Instagram handle is the same. It's his name, so you can find him. It's really easy. So
yeah,
and so if you just want to look at some of his amazing work, definitely go to his website or just follow him, because a lot of his stories have been told through his images. And we love that he's doing what he's doing in terms of telling his story through his images. So we appreciate you for coming on and sharing your journey with us.
yeah. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Yeah,
Thank you. Thank you. You have a good evening. And we thank our guests and also you all for watching tonight and sharing the journey of Octavio Jones and his journey of becoming an amazing photojournalist, and that he has been able to find what I would like to see his purpose. Because when you get in that cubicle, you'll find out what your purpose is sooner or later. So we thank him for coming on and sharing that with us. But if you know anyone, like he was recommended by someone who has been an inspiration to you, please email us at, oh, you can inbox us too. Email us at inspiredbyanonymous@gmail.com, or inbox us on our social media at Inspired by Anonymous on Instagram. We're also on Instagram. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube. We're on LinkedIn. So you can't miss us. You definitely can find us out there somewhere. But definitely make sure you tell us of someone, or if yourself feel like you've been inspiration to others and want to share your journey of your career with us, please do send a message to us. But if you also want to support the show, okay, make sure you send, I don't care if it's $1. I don't think Cash App lets you send 50 cents, so at least send $1. Please Cash App us today at $Kiana Tennant. All our money go directly to this platform. This platform was made and created so that we can inspire our youth and others who want to be inspired by others' journeys. So we can continue sharing these stories. If you have it in your heart, please go ahead and share and donate to the show today. But if not, we wish you all well. The holidays are coming up. Be safe, be joyful, enjoy the time with your family. Until then, I am your host, Shah Hayes. And remember, we inspire together.